Hello, my name is Khasida Freed, and I'm going to talk about my time as a firefighter paramedic. Uh, this is my portfolio. I was the first female firefighter at Camp Pendleton from 1985 to 1991, and then I went overseas to seminary, came back, there was a hiring freeze. I went to work at another base, China Lake, and I got my aircraft crash rescue there. I got my structural, nuclear, wildland, at Camp Pendleton, but then I got my aircraft at China Lake, and I got my shipboard and nuclear at NTC Orlando. So I had to go to three different bases to get the training that I needed to be uh, to encompass all of what the DoD actually did, because there's each base has a different legend, a different thing that it does, a different specialty. They're all pretty much self-sufficient cities in and of themselves on military bases. And I was the first female in the 70-year history of that fire department to be someone who actually passed these tests and did the job. There were four people before me that passed the tests, but they couldn't tolerate the job. They couldn't actually do or remain with the job. Some of them were emotional issues. They couldn't take the hazing, and others, like me, gave the hazing right back. As soon as I get this thing oriented to a place where I think that you can see me and I can see you, that might be much better. I'll tell you the first story. I am at the doctor's office. I should explain that I don't look anything now like I did then. I'm going to show you some pictures of me. But at the time, I was extremely buff, extremely fit. I ran 16 miles every other day, and I worked out 4 hours a day every day, whether I ran or not. And my claim to fame was that people had to respect me because I used the gym mentality of, well, there's always the parking lot. So I never used EEO, the Equal Opportunity Office, but I did use these hands. And that did actually work once. And yeah, it wasn't much of a fight. It was kind of funny, actually, because once I got out there, I didn't know what to do, really. So we ended up talking. A little bit shoving around first, but then I ended up talking because I don't think he wanted to fight me. I think he just felt threatened. I felt like he had to prove himself in front of other people. But then when he went outside, unlike high school, it wasn't this big crowd because it's a job description. People are like, well, I'm not losing my job over this. We'll find out about it later. And that's kind of how that went, where there wasn't any finding out later. We became really good friends. And to this day, this is the person that calls me once a week, every week. He's retired. I was the youngest on the department at the time, so he retired like almost 10 years ago. So anyway, Dean King is his name, and I was going to try to get him on a phone line, but his wife's home and he's busy, so I don't want to really stress him out with a phone call about the good old days. Beginning. Okay, so I started working for the California Conservation Corps, which is like, what I basically did was go to the forest and cut down trees that were scheduled to be cut down for burn maintenance, and they would sell these trees at timber sales, and my whole job was cutting down trees. So then I decided that I wanted to fight fire, and as soon as I turned 17, I was working for the CCC, and they had a transfer lateral position with the California Department of Forestry. So I took the test and passed it, took the oral board and passed it, and then became a helitech firefighter. So my first experience was pumpers and in firefighting, and then aircraft, rotary wing aircraft, and UH-1F helicopter at Hemet Ryan Airport was my first actual, I call it my real fire department, because the pumpers, once you were on them, it's like, You know, it's neither here neither there, and you're really humping holes a lot anyway. The truck just gets you from point A to point B at wildland firefighting, so it really wasn't a thing. Whereas helitech was a thing, because at helitech we would fly to 4 or 5 fires a day, whereas when you're on a pumper you might get 1 or 2 a day if you get any. And we would get there before the trucks got there, put the fire out, wait for them to get there. Then when they would get there, we'd take off. It was so much fun, and we had a siren, and we used to like play the siren in the air, like it means it's only for you. I mean, nobody's out in the middle of the, dead man's curve in your way. So it's just really funny. So basically, I went from just really situations where today they'd be illegal, then it was par for the course, and I gave it right back to them. So let's see, the first day at my fire department, there was all these magazines on the table where we'd eat lunch. So one of the issues I had was I felt like, oh, they're doing this to me. I got you. So there was But, We, Playboy, every kind of magazine you could imagine with a nude woman on it on the table. And I'm supposed to be eating lunch. So my first day, I'm eating lunch. I take a Playboy. I take my tuna fish sandwich, no pun intended, and I'm eating this sandwich. And it's just crazy because every eye is on me now. It's like I'm the 11th person in a 10-man station. But inside, I'm really mad. I'm just playing it for the camera. I'm like really mad inside. I'm like, I'm going to get you pricks of misery for this. So I went to F Street Bookstore. This is a bookstore, an adult bookstore, and I just so happened to get a magazine with 2 men in it. One dressed as a firefighter and one dressed as a police officer. And both really handsome. And I stuck that in between all the magazines. All the magazines were there the next day, and I took one and I kind of like skewed the other one so it could be seen. And the captain comes over and picks it up, and he's like, "What's this?" And I said, "I don't know." "Did you do this?" And I said, "Really? Me? Let me see that." So I look at it and I go, "Oh, these guys are gorgeous. Oh my God. Oh, I would love to do that, but let me tell you that I didn't do it." And not only didn't I do it, but there's a study this year that came out that says that 1 in 5 men are gay. And this is until I arrived at 10-man station. That means 2 of you need to discuss with the rest of you what and who you are, and leave me out of it because they're not interested in me. Although I would have just the time of my life with them, they're not interested in me. So he kind of was satisfied with that. And that was the end of that discussion. They were chasing each other around, beating each other up, playing pranks on each other. Everything was intensified. They were pulling half-inch holes through the station, weighting each other down. It was just like it was really like, I don't know, the bar scene in Star Wars. It was bad, but it was funny at the same time. Through the years, I got my respect. I mean, I made friends right away, and ironically, my friends in the fire department were the oldest guys there. One of my friends was a former sheriff. He was a veteran, so he had military rights in order to come to DOD, but he'd gotten terminated from the sheriff's department because he arrived on scene at let's just say a death, and it wasn't suspicious. It was blatant what had happened. The man had performed bestiality on a chicken, and he wrote in the report that his death was secondary to foul play, and he got fired for that. But this man was a great guy, had a great sense of humor. A veteran of Vietnam. All of my coworkers are veterans of some war, from Korea on up to the 80s and 85. Everything we've been involved in, and that's the difference between the fire department then and now. Then it had a character, and it was more of what you imagine a fire department being, what you see in the movies, all of that was much closer to reality with the people that I worked with, because they'd seen life, they've lived life, and they'd experienced near-death experiences, and that's what kind of gave them the gallows humor. And I earned all that over time. Can't possibly tell all the war stories at once, but there. Oh, one more good story before I get to the intense stuff. Another good story was a guy named Dean King, who is now my really good friend. At the time that I worked, I thought he hated my guts because we were always at each other, and I never really got it that he liked me. Like, dude, he's, just I just didn't look at my coworkers that way, but it was funny. So he shot me in the crotch with CO2. I'm sitting at attention, and we'd just gotten these trucks where you're not on the tailboard anymore, and because we had a lot of old 1960s trucks in the 80s that really had tailboards, and you responded on the tailboard, there's no place else to be. So I actually made tailboard in my lifetime. Aside from that, there were lots of incidents where we got these new trucks that we got to drive, these $1 million trucks, and operate these trucks that it was like going to heaven. So the first 3 months we had the trucks, we'd go do everything in them. So mundane things, like instead of taking a pickup truck, we take the whole station and the whole truck in order to be in this brand new truck. And I'm sitting there, and it's got like a little bar that keeps you from falling out, like a little amusement ride. I mean, everything you could think of. And it was really foreign when you're thinking of going from a platform on a strap at highway speed to like sitting in a chair backwards. It was just bizarre. But okay. And the same people that brought us these trucks took our poles, our brass poles, out of the station because the hole in the floor is a fire hazard. So therefore, the brass pole must come out. Yeah, just they changed the face of the fire department when they did all those kinds of things, and it's become kinder, gentler, and not the same thing. To the point where if I ever did go back, I don't know. I can't even imagine it now because it was so much better then, in so many ways. But that's an aside. Where I was going was to finish telling you the story about me sitting there, we're retrieving the mail. I am nozzleman, so I'm not getting off the truck for anything. And the hydrant man gets off the truck, and he goes and gets the mail. So Dean King pops out with his CO2, which is really cold, to the skin, and he shoots me in the crotch with it. And I just went, ooh, and I didn't know what to do. I wasn't going to get out and chase him, but he was looking at me like, chase me, chase me. And I'm like, I don't know how. I don't know when, but I'm going to get you. So then what happened was I went riding my bike. I had a mountain bike, and I was riding all over the state, all over the Camp Pendleton, and I found a dead frog over by the 14 area hospital. So I found the dead frog, and I put it in my pocket, my bike pocket, and I went past the station and said, this is going to be good. I'll put this in Dean's turnout coat. So I put it in his turnout coat. Okay. And time passes, time elapses, I hear nothing. So, okay, I didn't think twice about it. I go to Israel. I go to seminary. It's a year, if it's a day, since I put the frog in his pocket. Well, we responded to the Interstate 5 on a lot of really gory traffic scenes where people would try to leave Mexico, across the border, and get hit by cars. And it was tragic. And there's actually signs, like you see the deer crossing signs, there's actually signs with fleeing families for that purpose. And what had happened at that time was I'm gone. A year. I took leave without pay. I went to seminary, and I came back. But before I came back, this was maybe 6-8 months before I came back, I called up to see how the guys were because I missed everybody and I wanted to see what was going on. So I called up and I talked to one of my captains, Monty Kalin, and said hi to him. And we spoke for about 5 minutes. And I said, hey, is Dean there? And he said, yeah, Dean's here. So I Put Dean on the phone. Dean came on the phone. I said, Dean, did you ever find that frog in your pocket? And he says, that was you. And the ooh went across the water. I'm talking to him from Israel. He's in California. And I promise you, if you could feel something in your bones across the telephone lines, I felt it. And I was like shocked because right after that, the phone slammed to the ground. And I was like, ooh. So Kalen picks it up. Captain Kalen picks it up. He says, that was you? And I go, what do you mean, what was me? What happened? He goes, oh my God, you don't know what happened. I said, no, I don't. I've been gone a few months. Nothing happened. I was there. He says, okay. King was on a response, the I-5, and we responded to this medical aid, and people were down, the highway was shut off, and we were tending to the victims, and he reached into his pocket, and he pulled out this mush, and this stuff had basically, because the fire department turnouts are Nomex on one end, but it's like treated with water repellent so that the frog never really decomposed. It was rotten, but it didn't stink. And he wasn't like me. He didn't wash his gear, right? Some people's a thing, leave your gear dirty. It actually deteriorates the integrity of the clothing if you do that. It doesn't look as cool. Some people think if it's not dirty. I think that the functionality is everything, and to hell with fashion. And I kept my turnouts clean. So, in any event, I expected him to wash his turnouts. Well, he didn't. So, he starts screaming on scene because he looks at his hand and he looks at the ground and he associates what he sees on the ground, what he sees in his hand, and he thinks it's a body part from I-5. I mean, that's all he can think about is it's a body part on I-5. He starts screaming soprano, and they put him back on the truck. And then, because he's like the department prankster, he pulls pranks on everybody from the chief on down. There are people that don't like him because they don't have that sense of humor and they want him out. So basically, they send him to the psych evaluation and everything. He had a critical incident stress debriefing. All of this stuff happened because he shot me in the crotch with CO2. And it's nothing like what I wanted. I wanted him to find it or maybe stick his hand in it and find it, and that would be it. But he almost lost his job. So what that did was it caused him to really rethink how many pranks he wanted to play on people, and grow up a little bit. It caused him to grow up a little bit, but it wasn't something that I did out of malice. It just happened. So one of the points I have to bring out is, in the workplace, the way that we acted and reacted with each other would probably be cause for termination anywhere else with any other group of people. But it was a specific group of people that was like a band of brothers kind of thing, and people were really, really just crazy. It was the 80s. Okay, that's the good. That's some of the good. There's a lot more good than that. Some of the bad, because I want to talk about resilience. So some of the bad is we had a fire chief that was an inspector. He's dead now. But he was an inspector, and what he did was he documented the fire chief who was going through a divorce and taking care of his son. He would leave work, but he would come back, and they're allowed to leave work and come back because that's part of their agreement as administration. They can do that, but there's hours and times that they have to do it in. It has to be documented and the whole thing. So this guy took advantage of this man's lapse in his documentation and got his job, and he became the chief. So he kind of like soap operaed his way in. Then when he got there, he played favorites, and come to find out, he was a racist, and I don't use that word lightly, and he was so insecure that he alienated a lot of men as well. He wanted to keep a lot of men down too, so he was an equal opportunity scumbag. He got the position through nefarious means, and when he got there, he did play a lot of politics. He did get us new trucks, But that was only because he did paperwork. The other chief could have done the paperwork as well, but didn't do it because he was interested in saving money. Whereas the other thing would have been a huge expense all at once, which it was, but we didn't need it. So, and for all I know, he could have been planning to do it. So this split the department in two. There were people who said, what he did to the chief was underhanded, should never have been done, and therefore never respected him. And then there were people that just kind of admired the fact that he's 30-something and now he's chief, and they would follow him anywhere like little puppies. But those people tend to be the people that most of us don't hang out with. So there was that. And that was the worst corruption I'd seen in my life until I got married, or left the fire department because I got married. And then after I asked for a divorce 6 years later, I went to work in Texas. And I went to work in Texas for the Veterans Administration, ended up whistleblowing on them and reporting to Congress, and losing my job, but winning a lawsuit that I was my own lawyer as. And I won a settlement there. But in that town that I lived, there was only one other viable place to work, and that was the prison system. So I'd never worked for the prison system. I'd never had anything to do with the prison system. But on paper, it looked like law enforcement. So I said, okay, not as buff as I used to be, but I could still be a cop. I'd still be a good cop without having to, work out as hard. Or if I did work out as hard, I'd be even better cop. But the idea was that even now I could be a cop, right? Physically. So I said, let me just take this job. Took the job. And this is where you ask yourself, how much is work ethic really worth? Because I took the job because I have a work ethic. I took the job and I ended up whistleblowing on them too. The 91st day that I worked there, I'd seen the corruption really, really bad corruption. And back to back, the VA and now TDCJ, both of these jobs, just horrific corruption. And you think, is this a bad dream? What is this? This is where resilience comes in, because there's two options. You can quit, or you can succumb to it, or you can fight it. Well, three options. So I fought it, because succumbing to it's not an option to me, and going with it's not an option to me, because I look at that like, well, I can make more money walking the streets. I'm just going to go with the flow here. Corruption is corruption. So what difference does it make what distinction it takes? So I ended up whistleblowing there, and I ended up working for the FBI for 25 months, not for pay, but on a cold case murder that I thought I would make a difference by cultivating this information and giving it to this agent. And I'd signed paperwork and worked out a deal. I actually cultivated CIs of my own, and I ran a whole operation within the structure of the prison system as an employee. They didn't know anything about what I was doing, and I was getting information to this agent who did not act on any of it. So for 25 months, I'm risking my life. I'm like living a life that I could actually do a screenplay about, just that section. And just nothing came of it. But this guy gets promoted and ends up getting a better job within the FBI somewhere else. Not to do the job that he had contracted to do. And it was just corruption on top of corruption on top of corruption. Now, I thought to myself, Texas is like the Wild Wild West for like 5 seconds. And I said, wait a minute, New York? I left New York to come to Texas. So what does that mean? That means that in New York, they hide their corruption. Out here, it's like, what you gonna do about it? Huh? And that's basically the difference. Corruption is the same everywhere. The manifestations change because some people have the good sense to hide what they do. Some people get so entitled by the entrenchment that they're in that they don't even see the problem, you know. But it's just amazing. So, as far as resilience goes, what I wanted to talk about is the fact that I went through hell and I survived it without any kind of abuse of anything, no drug abuse, no smoking, no nothing. Because I don't have an addictive personality in that way, but I did feel stress. I had nowhere to take the stress out, and I would talk to people, and everything was all clandestine. But then there's like one person I'd tell everything to in New York, right? My friend, I'd call her up and tell her everything. And that way I got it off my chest, because if I was a cop, I'd have other people working on this project to talk to. But it was all me doing it all myself, thinking that I'm going to help with this cold case murder and also give information to improve the system, or at least make it to where they're not violating federal law at the state level. And none of that came to fruition. So one part of the resilience is not just surviving the corruption. The other part of the resilience was not letting the corruption that succeeded break me and break my will to be who I am. And I mean, I came from a pretty sheltered thing where the worst thing I saw was this one fire chief to people that are embezzling money and murdering people, right? And as a civilian with no arrest powers. So that kind of influenced me to take criminal justice. But then after I got completed with pretty much with that AA, I said, you know, I don't really want to live a life of this cycle of trying to introduce, you know, good versus evil and failing. What I think I should do is teach. So I decided to go to school to learn what I want to learn. And I don't care what somebody else thinks the marketability of it is, because I'm not going to school for them. I understand if you're 18, 19, 20 years old and you're going to school and somebody else is paying for it, then you're pretty much beholden to them. But if there's any way you can make up your mind, I would say, from my experience in life, to choose what you think you would like to do until you die. The rest of your life. Like, pick a major and marry. You're marrying this major. And if you can't see yourself marrying that major, talk to an advisor about something else. If that's not a marriage for you, talk about something else, because most people live lives of quiet desperation because they get these jobs that they hate. And don't be that person. I never worked a job I hated. I worked jobs where there were some things I hated that went on within them, but I didn't hate the job. I mean, I was fighting corruption in the prison system, but I treated the prisoners well. I treated them like people, you know, and I respected them as human beings. And that was a lot more than I can say for a lot of people that I worked with. And I could go on, but I'm already over time. So I just wanted to thank you for your time and attention. And I hope that this informative speech was somehow informative. I tried to cover resilience. I tried to cover being the first female to do something. And I didn't dwell on gender because I didn't dwell on gender at the time. I didn't dwell on EEO concepts because I didn't use EEO at the time. We had parking lots then. I didn't dwell on being victimized because I never felt that I was a victim. I was secondary to whistleblowing, was terminated wrongfully from 2 different jobs, but I would not have been able to sue them as my own lawyer and take them to court if I had felt like a victim, because I would have been too busy feeling like a victim. So what it did was it made me angry, it made me want to fight and research and write briefs and take them to court rather than curl up and just do something else right away. I was frankly just at the point where I had to use all my resilience to even think about going back to work. And then I said, well, really, do I want just another job description like this, or do I want something different? And the only way to get something different would be to get a degree or two. And that's what I'm doing now. Basically writing the script myself, rewriting my life script, and I'm either going to teach or go back to government and translate. But I really have hope for the future. With everything that's happened and everything that's happening now, I would like to leave you all with hope for the future.